Hello, we are about to tour the Vault of Sound in the Phantom Tollbooth. And we have the sound keeper. Let's see, where was I? Ah, here we are, right here. She quickly bounced to her feet with a chorus of jingles and chimes and started down the hallway. Don't you just love jingles and chimes? I do, she answered quickly. Besides, they're very convenient, for I'm always getting lost in this big fortress, and all I have to do is listen for them, and then I know exactly where I am. They entered a tiny cage-like elevator and traveled down for fully 3/4 of a minute, stopped finally in an immense vault whose long lines of file drawers and storage bins stretched in all directions from here began to where there ended, and from floor to ceiling. Every sound that's ever been made in history is kept here, said the soundkeeper, skipping down one of the corridors with Milo in hand. For instance, look here. She opened one of the drawers and pulled out a small brown envelope. This is the exact tune George Washington whistled when he crossed the Delaware on that icy night in 1777. Milo peered in the envelope, and sure enough, that's exactly what was in it. But why do you collect them all? He asked as she closed the drawer. If we didn't collect them, said the soundkeeper as they continued to stroll through the vault, the air would be full of odd sounds and noises bouncing around and bumping into things. It would be terribly confusing because you'd never know whether you were listening to an old one or a new one. Besides, I do like to collect things, and there are more sounds than almost anything else. Why, I have everything here from the buzz of a mosquito 1,000,000 years ago to what your mother said to you this morning. And if you come back here in 2 days, I'll tell you what she said tomorrow. It's really very simple. Let me show you. Say a word, any word. Hello, said Milo, for that was all he could think of. Now where do you think it went? She asked with a smile. I don't know, said Milo, shrugging his shoulders. I always thought that most people do, she hummed, peering down one of the corridors. Now, let me see. First we find the cabinet with today's sounds. Ah, here it is. Then we look under G for greetings, then under M for Milo. And here it is already in the envelope. Its envelope. So you see, the whole system is quite automatic. It's a shame we hardly use it anymore. That's wonderful, gasped Milo. May I have one little sound as a souvenir? Certainly, she said with pride, and then immediately thought better of it, then added, not. And don't try to think one, because it's strictly against the rules. Milo was crestfallen. He had no idea how to steal a sound, even the smallest one, for the soundkeeper always had at least one eye carefully focused on him. Now for a look at the workshop, she cried, whisking him through another door and into a large abandoned laboratory full of old pieces of equipment, all unattended and resting. This is where we used to invent the sounds, she said wistfully. Do they have to be invented? Milo inquired. Oh, but how do you invent a sound? Milo inquired. Oh, that's very easy, she said. First, you must decide exactly what the sound looks like, for each sound has its own exact shape and size. Then you make some of them here in the shop and grind them each one three times, into an invisible powder, and throw a little of each into the air every time you need it. But I've never seen a sound, Milo insisted. You never see them out there, she said, waving her arm in the general direction of everywhere, except every once in a while on a very cold morning when they freeze. But in here we see them all the time. Here, let me show you. She picked up a padded stick and struck a nearby bass drum 6 times. 6 large, woolly, fluffy cotton balls, each about 2 feet across, rolled silently out onto the floor. You see, she said, putting some of them into a large grinder. "Now listen." And she took a pinch of the invisible powder and threw it into the air with a boom, 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 boom. "Do you know what a hand clap looks like?" Milo shook his head. "Try it," she commanded. He clapped his hands once, and a sheet of clean white paper fluttered to the floor. He tried it 3 more times, and three more sheets of paper did the very same thing. And then he applauded as fast as he could, with a great cascade of papers filling the air. Papers filled the air. There he is, clapping. That's what claps look like. Isn't that simple? And it's the same for all sounds. If you think about it, you'll soon know what each one looks like. Take laughter, for instance, she said, laughing brightly, and 1,000 tiny, brightly colored bubbles flew into the air and popped noiselessly. "Our speech," she continued, "some of it is light and airy, some sharp and pointed, but most of it, I'm afraid, is just heavy and dull." "How about music?" Milo asked excitedly. "Right over here. We weave it in our looms. Symphonies are the large, beautiful carpets with all the rhythms and melodies woven in. Concertos are these tapestries, and all the other bolts of cloth are serenades, waltzes, overtures, and rhapsodies. And we also have some of the songs you often sing," she cried, holding up a handful of brightly colored handkerchiefs. She stopped for a moment and said sadly, "We even had one section over here that did nothing but put the sound of the ocean into seashells. This was once such a great, happy place." "Then why don't you make sound for everyone now?" he shouted so eagerly that the sound keeper leapt back in surprise. "Don't shout so, young man. If there's one thing we need more of around here, it's less noise. Come with me and I'll tell you all about it. And put that down immediately." Her last remark was directed at Milo's efforts to stuff one of the large drum beats into his back pocket. "And we will leave it there. She's about to explain why they don't make any more sounds. Until next time."